I want to talk about Saudi Arabia, Jack. Now, obviously, I didn't believe this. And I don't think you believed this either, right, when we first, saw the stories of it. It was about this airstrike. And the reason why we brought this up, because obviously Saudi Arabia, we try not to hide the fact, but it is a contentious country, right? We know that there's things going on there. We know that people are against potentially going to Saudi Arabia. Personally, I love the Saudi Arabian Formula E track. I think it's the best Formula E track that there is on the grid. And I kind of would be ashamed to lose it, if that would make sense. But and we've had 2 good seasons there. We've had, two really good years there. Some really good races. 3 years, thank you very much. We had 2 good years before that, and obviously the 3rd one this year. Maths, hard. So, but obviously there was this airstrike this year, so there was a problem. So I'm like, is this the time? Do we go, oh my God, Saudi Arabia is as bad, in air quotes, as possible, and we shouldn't be racing in Saudi Arabia? And maybe thinking about that, is F1 a target? Because this missile was heading straight towards Saudi Arabia. So technically, Diriyah was the target. Maybe, was Formula E the target? We don't know. We're not saying Formula E was the target. But there was a potential for a massive explosion. Let's say that missile does not get intercepted, Jack. There is a huge chance that we're watching the podium celebration and something bad has happened. And we've got from a massive sporting success to a human tragedy. And I just think it's a fine line, and I know it can happen anywhere, and this is the thing that we want to discuss. This could happen anywhere. Any sporting event around the world is subject to a terrorist attack. But is this something that Formula E, you feel, need to address, need to look further into, and actually, come up with a investigation to prove that, okay, this stuff, well, we can't say it won't happen again, but maybe it wasn't a direct attack on Formula E, per se? Or do you think, they can't let this go underneath, the rug and under the carpet?
Well, yeah, I do see that absolutely. And I actually think that when Formula One will go there, like what happened with Formula E, because when Formula E announced it was going to Saudi Arabia, there was a fair amount of backlash. When Formula One announced that they were going to Saudi Arabia, there was 3 to 5 times more backlash than there was beforehand. And I think that that's going to be replicated. I think that's going to be more 3 to 5 times more dangerous than potentially this was, because Formula One is a bigger event. I think. Yes, I agree with you. Diriyah is the best track on the calendar. I absolutely love the. I think they were calling the bobsleigh section, like going down the hill, and what they were calling on the race weekend. Obviously it is an issue. The country is renowned for having human rights issues, unfortunately, which they are trying to better, and yeah, it's a difficult one. They've got 7 years left on their contract now, I think. But obviously we may not even be in Diriyah next season. They may head to, I think Neom was one of the places that they were considering, or something like that. But even then, it is a risk to go to these countries. However, I think, especially for Formula E, I think it's a risk that they kind of have to take. Financially is what it is the first thing that comes to mind, because Saudi Arabia are paying a lot to host that to host the Formula E races, even more to do the Formula One races. And yes, there is this whole issue of sports washing, especially in that region. We've got the Qatar World Cup next November as well. I think these things are going to happen, and thankfully this airstrike didn't happen. Weirdly, I didn't even know that there was an airstrike until about 5 or 6 days after it was going to happen. But it's a weird one, but I think racing in Saudi Arabia is something that Formula E just does.
Yeah, I think you bring up a huge issue there with and I'm not saying, right, financially that Formula E have just gone, well, money's more important, who cares about ethics and who cares about morals, who cares about that, let's just go racing and get as much money as we can and keep this sport that we all love, that is true, we all love it, financially stable for the future. you know, it's hard because you hear a lot of stories about Saudi Arabia, but these are good stories that I'm coming on to. You hear people going into, and, you know, I feel sorry for the people in Saudi Arabia because a lot of gigs, people have been going to Saudi Arabia for gigs now, and comedy shows and stuff like that, and big time comedians and bands have been going to places like Saudi Arabia to perform. And they're coming back and they're telling these stories that the people are so thankful, they're so grateful that, you know, they've never had this opportunity before to experience comedy, to experience music shows, to experience racing, football, whatever it is. And that they are incredibly grateful, but then it's just a shame that things like this, you know, overshadow it. And it's even hard to bring this up as the first talking point on this show. Like, we could have just talked about the race and then vaguely mentioned that, oh, by the way, this happened. But as a journalist, that's not the right thing to do, right? This was the main unfortunately, whether we like it or not, this was the main story that came out of Saudi Arabia, out of those two EPs, because this is a human tragedy potential, right? And it was a potential to cause human death. Not saying that was the aim. I'm not saying that it was aimed at Formula E. You know, it was just an airstrike that happened at a vicinity of Saudi Arabia where a Formula E race was taking place, and that could happen anywhere, as we've said. But then you've got to, as a journalist, you've got to ask the question. You've got to ask the question to Formula E. You know, what are you doing? Are you looking into this? What are you doing to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again? I know this is out of Formula E's control, and to say to Formula E, what can they do to prevent it is impossible, right? That's just impossible because they can't control someone sending off an air missile. But they need reassurances from Saudi Arabia, I would assume, that this won't happen again. Because we can't go in 3 years' time, right? We've gone back 3, and then another one happens. You know, we still got a couple of years left on their contract. Do we still go? You know, do we go now? And those are the questions that I think need to be answered now. And I think Formula E just need those reassurances, and they need to release those reassurances. They can't just get them behind the scenes, because these questions will remain. If we go to Saudi Arabia, you know, it'll be a hot topic going into season 9 of next season with Gen 3. Or whatever, or season 8, sorry, before we get to season 9. You know, maths again, struggling. 7, 8, 9, right? But it will be a topic of conversation. Like, will something like that happen again? Do you know that this won't happen again? And as a journalist, that is the question you have to ask. So that's why I just wanted to, you know, tell the viewers and tell everyone who's listening to this, like, why this is important and why we can't just overshadow this. And as journalists, why we have to answer the questions, ask the questions to Formula E, because if no one does, then stuff like this just gets overshadowed. And I don't think, you know, if it went catastrophically badly, which we pray never happens, you know, people would be asking the question, well, why on earth are you there? And Formula E would be in a really tricky situation to get their one out of that one.